Your breath connects the above to the below. Your breath, through self-conscious attention, connects the above to the below. Welcome to lesson 22 of the alchemical Kabbalah, the cube of space. This week's current is the Fool, the vertical current of the axis mundi, and the core currents of the cube of space. The next 3 weeks, we will be establishing the great axis mundi, which is comprised of the 3 mother letters in the Hebrew Aleph Bet, and connects all the cardinal directions as well as the above to the below on the cube of space. So in this diagram, we see the axis mundi. We see Aleph, the Fool, connecting above to below, extending eternally up and eternally down. We see the letter Shin, or fire, connecting the north to the south. And we see the letter Mem, of water, connecting the east to the west. These are the 3 axes, the XYZ axis, on the cube of space. Note the 2 horizontal axes of fire and water mixed together produces steam, which is air, which is the Fool, Aleph. Also recall how in tarot the pillars of the high priestess are fire and water. The fire is in the water, and the water is in the fire, as they say in Kabbalah. So we're going to cover and be looking at many angles of this axis as we integrate the cube of space within all the levels of our being. There are a few ways to view the arrangements of the cube of space. We recognize the obvious, that the cube is a container and a model of creation, a working model of how creation comes into existence and how those endless creations of form evolve spirit and consciousness into higher levels of being. And from the 3rd dimensional experience, they appear to dissolve back into the source of being over time. We also know that the cube unfolded gives us the shape and form of a cross, which is the cross of matter and spirit. What we call matter, simply being the visible expression in this 3D realm of an invisible reality within from which it proceeds. Here is one simple unfoldment of the cube, showing the 6 faces and forming the cross. Here is another simple diagram of the cube showing the currents of the 12 outer edges that comprise the cube of space. Now we have completed the exterior of the cube of space and unfolded as we have transversed the outer 12 edges or petals. And we understand that these are the 12 traditional signs of the zodiac, or the intelligences of the zodiac. They are also associated with Christ and his 12 disciples and the 12 labors of Hercules. Here we see the cube, and we have completed covering all of these 6 faces in the center. And we now know these are in the west, the 7 planets or metals or interior stars from the chakras of the east. So now we come to the final 3 letters of the Aleph Bay and the 3 petals that remain unfolded, to be unfolded on the cross, which is the 3 mother letters that make up the axis mundi in the cube itself here. So speaking of unfoldment or spiritual unfoldment, let's look at the symbol of the cube unfolded in another way, another diagram. Okay. So here we see a beautiful symbol brought through the vehicle that was known as the Golden Dawn. This composite symbol is one representation of the Great Rose Cross. See how the rose is at the center of the cross, and it has 12 outer petals. Those 12 outer petals are the 12 edges of the cube of space that have unfolded. Recall that's where we started. We next moved to the center of the cube and the 6 faces, which you'll see are the middle petals on the rose. Those are the 7 petals in the very middle of this rose cross. Now, we come to the center of the rose itself, and we see a trinity of petals. The last remaining 3 petals of the rose are the 3 mother letters and the axis mundi of the cube of space. Here you can see they form a triangle within the center of the cross, a trinity. Now, see how the cross itself is also a model of the tree of life. And recall, on the tree of life, we back into the tree, or we emerge from the tree. But leaning back into the tree, in this diagram, we see the blue at our left, which is mercy and memory on the simple tree, and red on our right, right, which is action, volition, and severity. And on this tree, the above, the crown, is the yellow of superconsciousness, of the fool, and the magician, the self-consciousness. And at the very base of the tree, you see the exact same representation as you see in Malkut on the tree of life right here. Okay, so we're going to look at another image of this trinity of the mother letters right here. So these are the mother letters in Hebrew. The Fool is air. Sheen, the judgment key, is fire. And the Hanged Man here is water. So this is worth your time to set up in this arrangement and meditate on these three keys in this form. I will just say very simply that one brief view of this shows the spirit descending into the waters, and then a new creature rising from the waters. We could spend a lot of time on this triangle here. So if you want to, set some time aside for yourself and meditate on them yourself. But in short, the combination you see of the mother letters here results in the birth of a divine child ascending from the third dimensional world, which we know is the whole complete and western face of the cube. So we're going to move forwards. Do not let the multitude of symbols and diagrams discourage you. You know all about these things, all about these symbols on the inner levels of your being. These studies simply bring them to your self-conscious awareness over time, just like the beautiful roses unfold over time and the lilies in the garden of the magician. So too will you. So we're going to now look at a most simple model of the above, the below, and that which connects them. This week's lesson is the central column on the cube of space. It is Aleph, the great ox of solar fire, or Pneuma, the breath that is your true spirit, that is simply accessed in this world through your breath. Okay, so this shows the current of Aleph on the cube. And it happens to be the first three keys of the tarot, the Book of Wisdom. 0, 1, and 2. So the Fool is the axis mundi, a most simple and powerful working model of how we operate and connect the within to the without, the above to the below, in a living, conscious experience. Look at this right here. All right. Let's make this a little more accessible in simplicity. This is the same diagram that I showed you just before, except just the letters and keys one above the other. The Fool is the superconsciousness. It's your breath. The magician is the above on the cube of space, your self-conscious attention. And this high priestess is the below on the cube of space. And she is your subconscious or memory. So we have breath, attention, memory. If you can let go of all thought and just be present right now, your access to all of the world now is in your breath, your attention, and your memory. Breath, attention, memory. Bam. All right. The full key is your true self completely. Completely. It represents who you were before incarnation, who you really are now behind all the veils in this incarnation, and who you are after all incarnations. It's sometimes said that the true self is never born and never dies, as it is beyond all space and time, and yet is the source of all perceived dimensions. Walking the royal path, another name for tarot, allows us to consciously remember these truths for ourselves as living realities. And the experience of these living realities, these are called the mysteries. The state of superconsciousness, that is the full, is accessed simply through your breath. See the total simplicity of this. Your self-conscious focus on your breath is reflected in memory. And at its highest or deepest expression, brings about the remembering of your true self. So with that, we're going to look at our key for the week. Here is the Fool. The Fool is the only key in the Book of Wisdom that is everywhere and can be placed anywhere or nowhere. Notice it is the number 0. This is your whole self, your holy self. Really ponder. And this great sun right here is the white light that is the same white light that is illuminating the Fool, yourself. It's even lighting up the Fool's companion, the sweet dog. Lighting up this rose, lighting up this eye, and lighting up all the inner garments of the Fool. This is the fiery or scintillating intelligence. From the Book of Formation, the 11th path is the scintillating intelligence because it is the essence of that curtain which is placed close to the order of the disposition, and this has a special dignity given to it, that it may be able to stand before the face of the cause of causes. So, as stated, the Fool is the vertical current in the great axis mundi, which is Latin for axis of the world. So let's read from Merriam-Webster how it defines axis mundi. And we see it here. Axis mundi, axis of the world, line or stem through the Earth's center, connecting its surface to the underworld and the heavens, and around which the universe revolves. That's interesting, as the axis mundi is Latin for axis of the world, and goes through the center of the cube of space. If you've been following these classes, do you recall what key makes the center of the cube of space and holds that point of position? It just happens to be the world key. So that's pretty cool how that works, right? It's almost as if whoever brought this to us knew what they were doing. The cube of space, as outlined in the Sefer Yetzirah, is a story and working model of creation. So let's look at one of the most popular creation stories and see how it connects to the cube. We're going to just simply take the first 3 lines of the Bible from the book of Genesis and look at them in relation to the cube of space. Here are those lines. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. And the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. And God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. Genesis 1:3, King James. So we're going to briefly look at this from a Kabbalistic view, using the axis mundi as shown previously and the above and below on the cube. And we will review these 3 lines of Genesis. In the beginning, recall that the top of the cube of space is the magician and the beginning. God created the heaven and the earth. Recall that heaven is the above. And the earth was without form. There was no form yet. And void and darkness was upon the face of the deep. We recall that the face of the deep is the deep waters of the below, the high priestess, sometimes called the master of darkness. And the Spirit of God, recall that the tattva for spirit is the Vesica Pisces, or the oval. The symbol of spirit here is the Fool, as your whole self. So the Spirit of God is then said to have moved upon the face of the waters. See how the Fool descends through the self-conscious above and moves over the waters of the great high priestess. Also recall that the Sefer Yetzirah is the oldest known mystical text of Judaism. And God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. The top of the cube, the magician, now being reflected from the bottom, is known as the Master of Light in the Western tradition. So lastly, in these first three verses, we hear the word coming from the breath or spirit of God, now speaking into existence, that there be light. And the fool connects the above to the below. But I want to stress that this isn't a story about something that happened billions of years ago. This is what is occurring right now in you, through you, as you. You are the fool in manifestation, in creation, and also beyond what we call creation. This key connects you to your superconscious divine self. Now, the system that is the Western tradition, Kabbalah, can seem sometimes overcomplicated when one realizes that we are in essence speaking of the spirit and intelligence that is in our very breath. But remember, this system, specifically the Western tradition, is training you on many, many levels of your being. You are a multi-dimensional being, and Kabbalah speaks to all levels of your being and assists you in the spiritual unfoldment on all the levels of your being. This is why the system is, as they say, as it is. The divine intelligence that connects the above to the below on the cube of space, that is you. Your breath, through concentration, connects the above to the below. As you practice the core and basic practice of the alchemical Kabbalah this week and visualize the full key, pay very close attention to your breath, your in-breath and your out-breath. During your visualization with your physical eyes, and then as you visualize the Hebrew letter and imagery of the key within your mind's eye, allow the body to relax and rest back into this light. And as you do this practice this week, I want you to simultaneously meditate within your mind. I want you to state the zero statement on the pattern on the trestle board while you're visualizing this key in your mind's eye before retiring, right before going to sleep. So the statement is, this is truth about the self. All the power that ever was or will be is here now. I want you to say this in your mind mentally while simultaneously visualizing the key. And I want you to think about each phrase as you say it to yourself in your mind. All the power that ever was or will be is here now. Slowly state and ponder each word and phrase as you mentally repeat this statement that is truth about the self. And only state this statement 3 times within your mind as you visualize this key, and then let it go. This concludes lesson 22 of the alchemical Kabbalah, Aleph, the vertical axis and axis Mundi of the cube of space, the current that connects the above to the below. Thank you for all your light and presence.